You may have heard today that the United States Supreme Court stopped the Trump administration from deporting people under the Alien Enemies Act in a 7-2 decision. And that is not exactly true. The United States Supreme Court did, in fact, rule against the Trump administration and ruled that people cannot be deported and imprisoned for life without due process. But what the United States Supreme Court was really doing was reviewing a Fifth Circuit District Court failure. And that Fifth Circuit District Court failure was profound. So basically, people who were being detained and subject to being deported were, they petitioned the Fifth Circuit for injunctive relief, asked the Fifth Circuit to stop the administration from deporting them without meaningful due process. And the Fifth Circuit denied that motion, and the U.S. Supreme Court said denying that motion effectively was refusing to grant an injunction. And that's the Fifth Circuit's job. Now, the Fifth Circuit said they'd only had 42 minutes to act and lacked jurisdiction. The U.S. Supreme Court said, so sad, too bad. That is your job. Your job is to review these matters and to rule on them, especially when severe irreparable harm is likely to occur. And so what the U.S. Supreme Court did is it said that's what the Fifth Circuit has to do. It has to make a ruling. It has to review this. But it also reinforced that every single person in the United States is entitled to due process, whether or not they are a citizen. That's under our Constitution. And specifically, it did say that they were not ruling on the Alien Enemies Act. So let's take a look here. So I'm going to read you what the court said. So it ruled on due process and the Alien Enemies Act. Well, it actually said it's not ruling on the Alien Enemies Act. So what it said is that previously the Supreme Court has said, with all 9 justices agreeing, that detainees must receive due process. They must receive notice within a reasonable time in such a manner as will allow them to actually seek habeas relief before removal. In order to actually seek habeas relief, a detainee must have sufficient time and information to reasonably be able to contact an attorney, file a petition, and pursue appropriate relief. And so it's not specifically talking about how much due process is required here. And it's not talking about whether or not the Trump administration can remove people under the Alien Enemies Act. In fact, what the court said is the detainees' interests here are particularly weighty. And under the circumstances, notice roughly 24 hours before removal, devoid of information about how to exercise due process rights to contest that removal, does not pass muster. Again, they need time to contact counsel, and basically petition the court, that kind of thing. You can't really do that in 24 hours. However, they decide only that the detainees are entitled to more notice than was given to them. And they are granting a temporary injunctive relief to preserve the jurisdiction while the question of what notice is adjudicated. So that's what the Supreme Court is ruling on. It says specifically that they are not addressing the underlying merits of the party's claim regarding the legality of removals under the Alien Enemies Act.